Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Collector's Showcase. For anybody new to the channel, this is basically an interview series that I do. Seems like once every couple of years. So good time to watch this. Hopefully you're watching in 2025. We've got basically multiple guests that we have come on for a live chat for roughly about an hour, just to find out a little bit about the person behind maybe the brand or the collection and things like that. So not a big market talk video traditionally, although with our guest today, I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of that because this is Mr. Market here that we're speaking with. But welcome back, everybody. I see a few people in the chat, so thank you guys for joining. Today, we have Mr. Dan KetchumAllCollectibles. Shockingly, this is not his first time on YouTube. You might see him, what are you streaming now, 5 days a week with the podcast?
Everywhere, all the time, basically just 24/7 my life on YouTube.
Yeah, it seems like every time I just watched recently Rob Pokémon. I can't remember.
Rob does Pokemon. Yeah, I've been on his channel a couple times. Yep.
Yeah, the algorithm. You have now entered the algorithm, my friend, because you randomly popped up. I don't subscribe to his channel. I've never seen any of his content, and I just saw Dan with not the usual group of people I see, and I was like, oh, Dan's over here now. I've got to go check this out. So, yeah, you're everywhere right now. So that's one thing that'll be one of the topics that we sort of talk about is your expansion into just so much content. Even kind of getting ready for our pod here, going back and seeing beardless Dan, young, naive Dan, just kind of entering YouTube back in the 360p days. Sometimes, it's been really a journey to kind of see you progress, to where you are now, obviously on the business side, but especially even on the content side. But before we go into that, always the fun introductions. I can almost guarantee that 99.9% of people who watch this video live know who you are. But for anybody watching back, brief backstory, what you do, who you are in the hobby, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I'll speed run it very quickly. 99, I was in 5th grade. I did the thing like everyone. Kiwi, Game Boy Color, Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Crystal, Sapphire version. I didn't finish. I got out of it for over a decade. I moved out of my parents' house, found my old binder, dove back into it. And I've been into it for 11 years, part-time, side hustling for the first 8. In 2021, I quit my job to go full-time Pokemon. I've done Troll and Toad Evo, eBay. I've done a little bit of like live streaming now lately with Fanatics Live, Fanatics Collect. I've been interacting with every grading company, every selling platform, every avenue of the hobby that I could find.
That's a great summary. I know you do these all the time at this point, I'm sure, but no, that's one thing, for our history going back. I remember, I think you were maybe 150 subs or something like that on YouTube when I subscribed to you. And you were one of the very first people that I actually subscribed to in the Pokemon space within YouTube. So it was like S.M.A.R.T and then you. And I think we might have talked about this before, but your video, I quit my job to do Pokemon full time. That was my first introduction to you. You pulled up some Excel sheets, which you're known for. So I was like, okay, this is kind of my jam because I'm an Excel brain the same way. And it's just crazy to think like, after all these years, you're still going. And I'm curious on that because I know that you get a lot of market questions. Hey, Dan, I've got $1,000. What should I buy? That's not going to be the type of stuff I ask you. I really want to kind of understand a little bit more of the psychology kind of around what you've been able to do and ultimately how long you've been able to do it. So, with content especially, I know the business, that's pretty easy. There's a lot of incentives with that. You're obviously making money. You can see the dollars and cents coming. You can sort of plan that. With content, you have slowly done more and more and more and more content. And I know that all kind of wraps around to the business and sort of building the brand. But for anyone who does content, I can't think of anyone else other than maybe Nick Old School Pokemon on eBay Live or maybe PK that do this as consistent as you. So where did that switch come in when you decided, like I'm going all in on this. I'm really going to start ramping this up and doing this again, 4 or 5 nights a week. That's not including doing podcasts like this one here. What changed? I guess, was there a catalyst for that, or was it just sort of a natural progression to, hey, I need to do this more?
I just basically do what I enjoy. I do what makes sense to me financially, but also out of enjoyment level as well. A little bit hyperbolic. I'm live once a week on YouTube on my own channel, every other week on PokeFlips. But then I don't think I've ever like turned down or ghosted anyone on a collab. So you asked me to come on, I come on. I was on with Fat Belly recently. I've been on Retro multiple times. I've I've been on with Rob Does Pokemon. I've been on I've been on tons of different channels. So overall, I feel like the average would be twice a week, maybe. But then I have the Discord office hours that I do once a week. The content is interesting because I enjoy it a lot, so I can justify doing it just from the pure enjoyment side. But then directly, the viewership is not high. The monetary side of it is not that high from like YouTube revenue, YouTube ads, whatever it may be. But the indirect is massive. I going back to E4, my original days on Pokemon internet space, before PokeTube, before Poke Instagram. I joined E4 in 2004, sorry, as Gotta Catch 'Em All. That's where I met Charlie. That's where I met Rusty. That's where I met Nick, Old School Pokemon. That's where I met Zach. That's where I met like Jake, a lot of the Z&G, James, a lot of the people that I engage with most at a business level in the hobby, I met way back then. So I made over 5,000 posts on E4. I made 4 years of content now on YouTube. And directly, though, it's not a whole lot, but the indirect, the intangibles, the things that turned into is just monumental. Never would have expected it. And that wasn't even necessarily the plan. When I created my E4 account, it wasn't like, hey, 11 years from now, I'm going to have this empire selling multi-seven figures a year. When I created my Instagram, when I created my YouTube, it wasn't like I'm going to quit my job and go full time with this. It was just like, let me engage with other people in the space that I love. Let me document my journey throughout it. And a lot of it is just fortunate timing with where I'm at, where the hobby's at as a whole. So yeah, all of that comes to where I'm at today, having a good time, hanging out, doing business at a pretty high level now.
Yeah, I will say that, and I said 5 nights a week because that's what it feels like. Because maybe my algorithm is broken, right? Like there's a Dan video
Yeah.
always on my home screen at this point. It's just, there's always something you're talking about, and it's, for someone who tends to do these in very short sprints, I'll put out a season of this, and then I borderline disappear from YouTube for 6 to 8 months sometimes. I mean, it's crazy how quickly time can go by when you just stop doing these so often. But, getting back into it, it kind of reminded me, sort of relating to what you said, like how exciting it is to just be able to have these interactive conversations, not only with each other. I mean, we still talk even though we're not on YouTube, but being able to interact with people in the hobby who are newer, I've always found to be really enjoyable. And that's always nice. And especially for, the growth your channel's had and things like that. I mean, you got a lot of new people, and it's almost kind of a smile when I've watched you for so long and I've been engaged in this so much that you start seeing the same questions come up, after so many years. It's like, hey, I've got X amount of dollars. What am I buying, Dan? Or, hey, this booster box or that booster box, Dan, what am I buying? And that's one thing that I've always really enjoyed about you and I've always respected about you is you've never, similar to not canceling or not ghosting podcast requests or anything like that. Like you will answer the question, and you're probably, you're so much better than you were a couple of years ago at getting through chat. It's amazing. That's probably the biggest progression in growth. We're not an hour and a half behind usually, but just being able to respond to every question, give everyone at least, an answer, or at least give them the time. That's one thing that even if you don't necessarily want to answer, you tend to take it and then give, just nuggets of advice left and right, which I think is super helpful because I know a lot of creators, they will skip over questions. They'll kind of cherry pick their favorite ones. I've been guilty of that, before for sure. But you stayed consistent in that. And, that's one thing that your consistency in the content, I think, is the exact same as your business. I mean, with the business, one thing that I have noticed that's different is, how many different platforms did you just name that you've actually done like some sort of business with? Troll and Toad, I think you've announced that eBay Live, you'll eventually be able to do that. You got Fanatics as well. How are you keeping up with these things? Are these opportunities like coming to you as you continue to grow? Are you looking just for the next avenue all the time? It's kind of amazing that your brain is processing all this stuff as much as you have going on.
Yeah, sometimes it's a matter of I find a diamond in the rough that it seems like a lot of people are overlooking. Shout out TCA Gaming, Rusty, known by everyone that knows the two of us, I believe. But years ago, I don't remember the year. I don't remember exactly. I think I was in his Patreon. I was watching some of his videos. He talked about this Troll and Toad. That was a service there for the taking for anyone. It was too good to be true. It was mind blowing how good of a service that was, how cheap it was. I got into it for a few years. I got into it at really good timing. They helped me bury myself from my backlog when I was transitioning from part-time side hustle into full-time. And so that one was like, it was there for the taking. It was there for anyone. And then there's other times where in my Pokemon journey, it's been like when, what is it? When a door closes, a window opens or whatever, eBay Vault closing, rolling into Fanatics, collect Fanatics Live. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm trying not to highlight questions as we go through mine, but Mason, that's too good. That's too good. Everybody needs their first shot at a live stream. So
yeah, shout out to CNA Games getting one of these little known guys out here that doesn't have much FaceTime on YouTube already. Appreciate you, Peak. But yeah, Fanatics Collect, Fanatics Live, where I'm at now, that was less of finding a diamond in the rough. That was more like a door got slammed in my face. I was pivoting my business heavily towards eBay Vault after I had Troll and Toad Evo pulled away from me. So it's like, hey, let me roll into this eBay Vault. Looks good. 0% fees. They're gonna turn it into 3% fees within several months. That sounds good to me. Let's go for it. And then that goes away. I had been familiar with Fanatics. I kind of like dipped my toes in everywhere. So I had been very familiar with PWCC of years prior. Fanatics bought them, and I get a cold call. I get a DM, and I get a DM from who is now my account manager. And I talk with him quite regularly, getting in with Fanatics Collect, who poached me off eBay with the vault closure. Now I'm rolling into Fanatics Live. If you had asked me a year ago, 2 years ago, eBay Live like would have been my top one if I was going to go into the live selling platform. But since Fanatics kind of grabbed me on the auction stuff, and I was having success there, and I was really enjoying my interactions with them, enjoying how it was working for the business, I opted for Fanatics Live over eBay Live. So I'm I'm just here having a good time, seeing where the wave takes me. Definitely riding the wave. A lot of riding the wave.
Well, I'm curious too with Fanatics because I, on a much smaller scale, but I've probably had like 3 or 4 different platforms reach out, probably mainly for my Instagram presence, my YouTube presence is, it's more of like, oh, yeah, I know who he is. And then like the next person's like, I have no idea who you're talking about. But they've reached out in the past to try and work something out. So I'm curious with Fanatics because when I thought Fanatics, I mean, even when they purchased PWCC, I didn't necessarily think like Pokemon, so that's something I would have probably had to be, if I'm putting myself in your shoes, probably sold on. How do they lead into that conversation? Are they like, hey, look, we're really putting an emphasis on TCGs. We kind of dominate a lot of the sports side of stuff. How do they approach that with you? And like, I guess from someone who is also in sales, how do they sell you on being able to do this?
Being pretty open here. So eBay, I was in conversations with them about potential rates and this and that. And it was all very like shrouded in mystery. And it was all like, we'll talk about it later.
After you've done lives, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
One thing I loved about Fanatics, they're like, hey, if you sell this much, you'll get this rate. If you sell this much, you'll get this rate. If you sell this much, you'll get this rate. They publicly posted that at one point. I don't know if it's still shared publicly anywhere, but I liked their directness. I liked the people that I talked to there. I talked with people at Alt. I talked with people at Fanatics. I talked with people at eBay. I talked with people at Rare Candy, a lot of different platforms. And I just meshed well with the people there. I was very familiar going back to E4 days. I used to be in the E4 Discord. What was it I forget which night it was, but like the PWCC eBay blocks closing. It used to be like a big event in the Discord voice chat.
I remember that. I remember watching live streams. We would all watch them live or jump in Discord calls. I thought it was Sundays, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it probably was. I almost feel like there was another day. Maybe it was. I almost.
Well, there was the weekly and the premiere.
My memory's failing me.
Yeah.
It might have been Sundays for every weekly, and then it would have been, maybe it was every 30th, or it could have been different days for the premieres. I can't remember exactly though, but I used to be in there with dozens of other people. It used to be a big event. So like I was familiar enough with them. I think the Pokemon space was familiar enough primarily. When you think Fanatics, actually this shirt right now, Fanatics shirt, my Jets, my Mets, my Rangers, all my teams, those are all Fanatics shirts. So, but yeah, PWCC, eBay collaboration used to be like a massive event in the space. And I think Z&G Emporium has taken over a lot of that helm now, not quite to the level, but he's trying to get there though too.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it will. Yeah, it's interesting too because with Fanatics Collect, there was never, or Fanatics Live, I guess I should say, I think you were the introduction for a lot of people in the hobby to that particular service. I mean, I had never even considered looking at cards there. I mean, you kind of get an itch like every few months. It's like, let me look around. Like, are there slept on like platforms where I can get like 60% market today? Like, let's go take a look. Um, but they're either, from my experience, like either too small to where like there's a group of people who are just, you're always going to see market price or over because people found out about it, early adopters, etc. Fanatics has a really fun platform, especially with you branching off and having PK do your, rips and then Ponga as well, and being able to see you and PK, break the base set booster box. That's fun. It's interactive. It almost seems like a lot of these platforms are trying to get more to the really focusing on like the live streaming element and really the interaction. And I think it's almost like they've seen like the success of things like YouTube, and then obviously eBay Live is a big one as well. But Fanatics just feels kind of easier. From my personal, just subjective experience, eBay Live seems very fast. Like it seems like I can't keep up, and really I've only jumped in a few different lives. But Nick, old school Pokemon, I mean, he's basically eBay famous at this point. I can barely keep up with how quick his chat goes. Like they need to implement a slow mode at some point. But it feels like I'm really like having a trigger finger anything I'm bidding on. Fanatics actually felt like it was a decent pace, which I liked. But all that being said, you were the person who introduced me to that. I think a lot of other people probably, you were their entry point into Fanatics. As you kind of start with that, because I know you've talked about eBay Live, potentially, or that's probably going to be done. Your public videos and other conversations kind of blur together sometimes because I hear so much from you. But
Yeah.
how are you planning on like balancing that? I mean, do you see yourself like, and I know you're going to outsource, whoever your streamer is with eBay, but how do you kind of compare the two? I mean, is there one that, I'm going to start small? In a situation where they do equal business, I mean, is that something that, are you going to be able to source enough to be able to support these two babies that you've created, I guess, at that point?
Yeah, that right now, my main like time spend in my business is keeping PK and Ponga fed. They are hungry streamers. They are running every night. PK is running 5 days, 5 nights a week. Ponga 2 nights a week as well. Actually, I got to shout it out because we're here. But next Thursday, Pokemon Day, Ponga and I, like PK and I did last month with the base set box, we're breaking a Jungle First Edition box. So one thing I'm trying to do for as long as I can, I'm trying to break a WotC box every month, and I'm doing it in sequence. I doubt that I'll be able to do Sky Ridge by like next January, which is where it would land on the calendar, but we'll see how long we can take it. But anyways, sourcing is the bottleneck. And I think PK and I launched on October 4th, if my memory serves me. So from October 4th all the way until the end of January, I was getting like really in a rhythm. I was getting a real good feel for all my spreadsheeting, all my data compilation. Like, this is how much we're going to sell every week. This is how much I need to source every week. And then I get a call from PK. It's like, what's PK called me for? We talk relatively regularly, obviously, but he's like, Dan, I'm going to put in my 2 weeks this Friday or next Friday. And that was like a week or two before he did it. He talked to me about it, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to need to reevaluate, because there were talks of Streamer 3 happening. And that was when I had the equilibrium figured out with just PK and Ponga being side hustlers. But now with PK being a full-timer, it's like, I'm going to need to give this at least a month to figure out what my new equilibrium is, to figure out what new hours he's going to stream. And I'm getting close to that point. I don't have it fully sorted out. I posted on Instagram recently. We ripped 4,000 packs last week. So I'd been saying all year long, like 100 to 150,000 packs. That was before PK was full time. Now that PK is full time, it's like 200 to 250 is within the full realm of possibility. If I add a third streamer, we might be talking 300,000 packs. So it's like, I need to do some tests. I need to post some buy lists on Monday, see how many people message me. I need to like forecast what my historical distributor allocations were and like forecast them out what they might be this year. And it's a hard thing to forecast because like this is not a normal year for Pokemon distribution. So there's a lot of moving parts. I'm still trying to find out what like the new normal is with PK being full time. And third streamer, I plan on having it happen, but I don't know exactly when. There are thoughts rattling around in my brain, but nothing that is like firmly ready to execute on.
Well, you know, one thing that comes to mind when you talk about that, which congratulations, by the way, on, I know like it's funny because every time you throw numbers out and amounts and quantities, I think people are almost like numb to it, hearing it from you, which is a great problem to have. But seriously, congratulations. I mean, being able to even scale to that point on a brand new platform with, you know, first time, to my knowledge, outsourcing something like this, you know, as far as you're selling and things like that. I mean, it's just amazing to be able to see, you know, it's like the bigger the beard got, like the bigger the bankroll, the bigger the business. Like it's amazing. It's like you're going to be like one of those guys off of whatever that old Duck Dynasty show was, like when Dan's like truly billionaire status, it's just going to be laying on the desk. But, you know, from what it sounds like, because, you know, you're talking about the selling, and I've heard you talk about this in the past, and I think you've done it. I think you're not the only person who's done this, but I think you've been the most open and transparent about like buying your time back almost and being able to outsource so many things. I can't remember whose podcast it was that you were on, but you talked about like you would outsource like your TCG player as well, like managing and take that account and everything. And people are like, what? Really? And you're like, yeah, like I'm literally trying to be the buyer for my business and everyone else kind of takes care of that. As you continue to scale, do you think you're going to get to the points where you're going to outsource, maybe not outsource, but add on someone else as almost a buying vessel for you? Like instead of having to worry about having the better rates and being able to do that, do you think that'll ever be a situation where you take a step back and you truly become like the capital? You're still buying, but you're also the capital guy. And you're almost just like, this is someone I trust. I know them. Go out on the road, like go hit everything, buy everything. Here's what we decide on. Because you're doing it on the selling side now. Is that out of the realm of possibility?
I can hear the groans coming already. This is where the parable of the Mexican fisherman comes in. This is where the question of how much is enough versus more. To me, enough is in my vocabulary. More is there too, but like there is a limit. And I have had the thought though, like I've had the thought, okay, Sky, that one guy, shout out to him, outsourcing my TCG player. Shout out to PK Ponga, outsourcing my Fanatics live streams. Shout out to Retro, outsourcing my Japanese booster boxes on eBay. I've got a lot of things sorted out, being outsourced, fulfilled by other people. But one aspect that I've not been able to remove myself from is being the capital, being the buyer, being the one interfacing with the consignment payouts, all that stuff. But it's crossed my mind. How could I slash could I in general? And like Z&G Emporium, he is building a business that if he does it correctly and he puts the right people in the right positions, the hardest thing to hand over, which I believe is fully done by him and his wife, Lauren. James and Lauren are the only ones with like the keys to the bank account. They're doing the payouts. They're doing that stuff. James is doing some of the social media same way I am, just not, I mean, he's doing Instagram significantly better than I am. He's doing YouTube a lot more sparingly, but he's doing it very well. I've had the thought many times of like, could I outsource that final piece? Because one thing, and I'll use a few names of people that I'm comfortable using, but I think a lot more people would apply. Myself, Rusty, TCA Gaming, James, Old School, Pokemon, Nick, a lot of these people that are running massively successful 7-figure, if not multi-7-figure, nearing 8-figure businesses, a lot of them are not sellable businesses because we are instrumental to the business. If we were removed, it would collapse upon itself. There is no one running the role at Z&G Emporium aside from him and his spouse of doing the actual most important role of the business, right? Like paying out the consignor. That's a key piece. But I think, and I could be wrong here, I don't want to like speak for him on what he's trying to build. I would think that years down the line, he might try to hire for that role. Could I hire for that role? I think it's possible. I think it would be, it would need to be someone like me, someone who's been around for a long time, knows a lot of stuff. It would be need to be someone that I could trust unconditionally. I mean, I'm trusting PK, Ponga, Skya, Retro. I'm trusting all of them very highly, but there's still a cap on how much. Like I'm trusting them. I can literally tell you how much inventory I have at PKs, how much inventory I have at Pangas, at Retros, at Skyas. I'm trusting them to the 5 figures, maybe into low 6 figures level. If I give someone the bank account, if I give someone the buyer's hat to put on, if I put someone on on all those duties, that is a whole different level. That is an order of magnitude higher. That is the highest level there is. And
one thing, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no,
do
you're
you
fine.
think the situation would have to be all or nothing? Like, and not that I'm trying to do like business strategy during our interview on this, but this is fascinating to me because my initial thought was like, of course he's thought of this. Like you have a very analytical, operations minded brain, and you and I are very similar in the fact that like we try to buy our time back. Like that's really the goal. Is like we want to do well, but also we don't want to sacrifice family time and just personal time as much as we can. Do you think it's something that like? Do you think it would have to be like an entire handover? Do you not think it could be something to where there's certain limits on buys around certain shows you can't make? You've got a guy who is fine going to 12 shows a year, 13 shows a year. It's like, I've got a budget for each show, and here's what I want you to go look for. And you've got an operating account, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I just could see you doing something like that versus being like, here's the empire. That's something I can't even imagine. I don't think, as much as I know you, I don't think that you could ever truly step back from that. I think you would be probably, if someone was lucky enough to be handed those keys and they were not related to you, even if they probably were, I don't think you could keep your hands out of it. I think you'd be on the phone with that person daily, maybe even hourly at that point. It's like, hey, what are we doing here? What's going on? But I mean, would that be an alternative situation that you could see yourself doing? Because you can only travel so much. And I know you're not even going to that many shows this year.
I guess that's a really good point. It doesn't necessarily have to be here's the entire full bank account. Here's everything. The only way I could sell the business and truly like sit on the beaches sipping margaritas every day, which I don't ever intend to do. But the only way I could fully leave would be fully giving everything over. But there is an in between. You bring up a good point. There is an in between. Like I see Retro's in chat. He does most of my Japanese sourcing. Retro knows this is not going to be news to him, but sorry, Retro. I stray a little bit here and there. Sometimes I do grab my own deals from other suppliers. But like I've sent, what's the most money I've sent to Retro at one time? I've sent Retro 20 grand, I think, to just like, hey, go buy me stuff. Go buy me singles. Go buy me Japanese boxes. I could definitely have a couple strategic buyers where we have an agreement, a lot of trust there still. But like, I just give them 50 grand a month and I say, go wild, go buy me stuff, send them to PK, send them to Panga. There's a lot of different ways it could be done, all at varying levels of me removing myself from it. But still, like, I think one fact remains, unless I got to that full hand over the keys thing, I couldn't sell KetchumAllCollectibles Incorporated. I don't think Rusty, in its current state, Rusty couldn't sell TCA Gaming. Nick couldn't sell old school Pokemon. But if you get to the right level, like Rick Probstein, I think could sell Probstein. And he's doing the whole BYD bid live selling platform thing. And I don't know if you heard all that, but he's creating like an eBay competitor. Yeah, Rick Probstein is doing like massive things.
I mean, I'm assuming he's got the capital to do that at this point. I mean, the guy's a monster, so.
Yeah. Which maybe that's James's final form as well in 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, you'll be Probstein one day, James. That's what Dan is saying. And maybe it's a different type of business model setup. It's one thing because what a consigning business I could kind of see, because really what you're purchasing if you're actually evaluating purchasing a business like that is customer acquisition. It's like, what are you returning? Like, what are your recurring customers? It's because that's the hard part of evaluating things. Like you can only value inventory so much, and there's not an official way to evaluate like Pokemon cards or inventory and things like that. You can't leverage against it. Things, again, going down that rabbit hole. Of course, I feel like we were going to do that, but it is interesting to see you being able to capture your time back, because everyone I speak to, not that I think they celebrate working like 80 hours a week, but it almost becomes a flex of like, look how much I'm putting into this. Like I'm really dedicating, I'm doing this. And I know that you put in a ton of time now as well, but like you said, you do it because you enjoy it and you are scaling it. But when it's time for you to really like step away for a bit or do something with the family, I've never seen you hesitate, at least from what you've spoken about. I'm not in your house, but like, it seems like you definitely have your priorities like in order, very similar to what I would look up to, you know, when it comes to that for anybody in the space. And that's something that I think, especially in a market boom, it's you really are sacrificing because it's very hard not to, I don't want to say FOMO, but kind of right now because there's so many different opportunities to make money. And that kind of leads into one of my other questions. I mean, I know you are very, very good at staying like emotionally balanced when it comes to, you know, buying, selling. I mean, unless there's like, you know, $10,000 pack rips, I think that might be your kryptonite sometimes, but, or maybe alpha magic or beta. But being able to, you know, how do you handle not FOMOing into a market that we're in right now? I mean, this is February 2025. So when I watch this back in like a year, I'm going to remember like how much of a rocket ship this is. How do you not just literally go out and spend every dime you have on buying stuff? I mean, obviously that's an exaggeration, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, at the point that I'm at now, I'm not paying 100% of market for almost anything. So trying to make it more applicable to like the viewer who might be a consumer, a collector, whatever it may be. This is called Collector Showcase, right? My best collecting days are behind me. These days, it's more evil capitalist business, Dan.
I had
But
some fun. We talked pre-stream. I had some fun DMs, by the way, chat from
yeah,
having Dan on a collector showcase. To be fair, he was on 2 years, which is crazy to even say. It was 2 years ago.
I was looking at it. I forgot John was on there as well with me. I had some of the same background going on, but not quite as filled in as it is right now. Pretty
Still had a
wild.
personal collection. It
Um,
was actually fitting. It's just very different now.
only the 5 o'clock shadow going. Yeah, I've changed in a lot of ways, but I've changed to fit the market. Back then, 2 years ago, still the market valued more things more than I did. But these days, it's like the market almost universally values Pokemon cards more than I do. So one thing I always say is like, if you value something more than the market does, buy. If the market values something more than you do, sell. That's like a simple underlying philosophy that I've just operated my business on and in my collection formally. But how do you avoid FOMO? Patience. If we're talking like let's talk less broadly, let's talk more specifically. If you're jonesing for some prismatic evolutions, one thing I'll constantly preach is patience. Patience is a virtue. Patience will save you a lot of money. I can't promise it, but every other set in Pokemon's history has been available at MSRP or less. And there's been a lot of times, our most recent Shining Fates, Vivid Voltage, Battle Styles, even at release, they were at release or shortly thereafter, they were 150, 200, higher than 200 out of the gate. And people FOMO'd, people stonked, people hyped it up. People were going crazy for that Rainbow Pikachu VMAX. And a couple years later, they were all over the place, left and right. I don't think Prismatic will get as widely available, as cheap as Vivid Voltage was. And I don't know if the ETBs will ever come around. I can't promise you that ETBs will be like 60, 65 available in mass. But I think that
it's hard to say they won't. Yeah.
Yeah. I think history has shown that every set has gotten there. Every set, not every SKU, not every item individually, but like loose packs. If they don't get below $7, $6.50, $6, I'd be extremely shocked, and it would be the first in our hobby if packs don't get that cheap. So patience.
No, and it's interesting too, you know, especially being able to sell like, you know, some of the PC items that you had. I mean, I obviously I'm going to bring up the World's Trophy because that's, you know, I fangirl over those all the time. And you were like, hey, I'm selling this. How do you, you know, especially with all the new stuff coming in, and I sometimes do struggle with this occasionally, even though I'm someone who tends to liquidate like 98% of what I get in. I mean, it could be the coolest card ever, but that feeling fades in 48 hours, you know, or 5 seconds when it goes in the cabinet that's like in there, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I had this. But how do you? I mean, you definitely, especially you know, with your consignments and stuff like that. I mean, you've had some crazy rare heavy hitter cards come through. How do you? I mean, do you feel anything like you used to feel when it comes to like a PC? Like, is there any sort of like itch that comes back that you've got to bury back down and put like, you know, the business above it? I mean, I guess what I'm asking in a joking way, Is there any old Dan left in there whenever you get a card that you're like, man, this is so cool to like, I've got a Pika ring in my hand, or whatever it may be.
That's I see Mason's comment. There's I need a robot emoji. I need a robot emoji. This one.
Yeah, that's great.
But one thing. So with eBay Vault, that was one big positive of eBay Vault relative to Fanatics Vault currently that I do. So with eBay, like I sold Zach, Gem Mint Pokemon. I sold his PSA 10 base first Charizard for 217,500. That card was in my hands. That card I shipped into the eBay Vault. With Fanatics, people ship directly to my vault. So like I've sold some massive cards. I've never physically held most of them. Sometimes people ship to me. Sometimes I pick them up at a convention for whatever reason. But the majority, so that's one thing. The Fanatics consignment doesn't scratch the itch in the same way. But there are times where I'm on Fanatics, I'm on Z&G, I'm on whatever. And I'm just like, man, what this card was going for a couple weeks ago, like this is feeling a little bit low. I'm feeling a little feisty. It's like I should just buy this. Two big things that stand out that I was very close to buying in the past, that I was very close to buying recently. Pika Ring and Mew Orb. During the boom of booms, they were like 40 grand, somewhere in there for a PSA 10.
2021 probably, I would imagine.
Yeah. Friends of mine, Brennan and Chris, Pallet Town Pokemon and Crystal Pokemon, they have some available for sale. And I want to say the PSA 10s are like 16 grand or something. It's like, man, I could just click a couple buttons and a couple days later, those could be in my PO box. I have the money.
It's probably harder to now because you've got, and again, I'm not assuming anything. I do not have eyes in your bank account. I can only just follow the trajectory of hearing everything. There's a lot more capital to play with at this point. So there's got to be another, like 16 grand feels very different in 2025, Dan, than it did 2021, Dan, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I could literally click a couple buttons and I could have those in my PO box in a couple days. I know the guys well. Maybe I could get a slightly reduced price. But I could get like homie pricing a little bit, but it just doesn't feel responsible. It doesn't feel like, even though I feel like in a lot of ways they could and should do well, I don't have as many advantages in slabs as I do in like sealed. Sealed, I like, because if I'm buying those, I'm buying them at 100% of market. One thing I love about sealed is compared to singles and slabs. Singles and slabs, especially a higher end slab like that, I can only buy it at 100% of market. And then if I buy it at 100% of market, I have to wait for market to go up to sell it at 100% of market, pay my 3 to 5% fees, depending on who and where I'm selling through. And then I'll net 95 to 97% of market, depending on how I sell it. Whereas with sealed, I can buy it. I spent 30 grand yesterday. I posted a new buy list on Monday. I probably spent 20 grand on Monday, 20 or 30 grand on Tuesday. I'm spending money at 80% and I'm selling it at 110% minus fees and stuff. I'm maybe netting closer to 90%. But if I can make 10% guaranteed, heavy air quotes, that's like, that could change. That could go away very quickly. But if I can make 10% margin on 5-figure amounts nearly daily, it's like, how do I not do that? How do I risk? How do I pull 15, 20 grand out of that cycle? That's what I have a hard time.
It's funny hearing you say these things because I'm talking about the collector itch that is so forgotten, Dan. You wanting to own anything like these cards that really stand out to you, like being able to say, you know what, I deserve this, or I'm okay doing this because I want to hold on to this. And one thing, and this is kind of a two-parter. So what I do usually, if I have like a really good play in the market during a certain time frame, like Prismatic was very kind to me. I was very lucky to have like a very large quantity of ETBs and was able to liquidate those to one buyer at a price that we were both very, very happy with. And I kept two. And I was like, that's my timestamp of like that moment. So when I look back at that box, I'm going to remember back to what the market was at that time. And that's kind of the way that I'm like personally collecting. because I don't necessarily have as much. I mean, there's a couple of cards out there that I'm like, yeah, these have been grails forever. I would love to own. But there's nothing really that stands out to me where I'm like, man, I really want to hold this because I just love the card or I love the art. Like it's still, you know, I like some cards more than others, right? But I'm more of now kind of almost documenting my journey through the hobby with keeping back like one or two products out of like big moments for me or big, you know, gains in the hobby in certain times like this. Is there anything like that for you at this point, or is it all come down to like I don't have my percentage growth like coming in? Like, are you that locked in, you know, going into this, and not a bad thing at all? I'm just curious.
Eh, Frankly, like when I take myself out of the Pokemon space, because in my past, if you look behind me, you can see only Dooley here. Schultz got cropped out. Sorry, Schultz. But like I've collected Steins, I've collected coins, I've collected video games, I've collected all different kinds of stuff. And Pokemon is expensive. Pokemon is
Hmm.
expensive as hell. I look at the Mew Orb and I look at the Pika Ring and I'm like, man, 15 grand. A few years ago, they were 40 grand. But I just pulled up on eBay. I owned one for a short time in the past, a St. Gaudens $20 double eagle. I am a big like US type coin collector. I have most of them in my collection. I don't currently have a St. Gaudens $20 double eagle. And they're like 3 grand. They're like 3 grand. And one thing that gets me, former chemical engineer, intrinsic value, all that good stuff. These are like gold. There is
Hmm.
utility, there is intrinsic value to gold. So it's like, Dan, step back for a second. With the same 15 grand that you could buy that Mew Orb PSA 10, that you could buy that Pika Ring PSA 10, you could buy a draped bust dime, you could buy a seated Liberty dime, you could buy a trade dollar, you could buy a St. Gaudens double eagle, you could buy that grail. So let me, I'm gonna need to move my camera for this one because I want to show this guy. This
Go
creepy
for it.
dude. See this creepy UC dude here?
I do.
That's
I'm
like
confused.
$1,000. That was made in 1930-ish. That's like 100-year-old piece of it's called like Breweriana. It's like brewery collectibles. Those things are like a little under a grand now. 100 years old. The attrition is absurd. There's one just like that one, except like aside from that guy having like he has UC Utica Club as his bottom. There's a guy that has like blue pants. I want the blue pants creepy dude. So
To
I have
match
the
him.
UC creepy dude. Yeah, I have it's the same head, it's the same beer, everything. I have the UC creepy dude, but I want the blue pants creepy dude. Am I gonna spend 15 grand on a card that there are hundreds of when I could spend 2 grand on a creepy dude that's 100 years old? That there might be only 100 left in the world in any kind of reasonable, presentable condition, and I probably know owners of 20 of them or something. And maybe there's less, maybe there's more. I don't really know, but that's why I have a hard time buying because like Pokemon is objectively expensive, and I think if you ever had Jake on, if you ever do have Jake on in the future, I think he'd talk about his Disney cards and he'd talk about like all different kinds of things. And Pokemon is expensive as hell.
I would agree with that. You know, this will be kind of I think a good topic to not necessarily finish the stream on, but I just put it in chat. We're going to go through some chat questions now. I try to keep these right around an hour. So, but this is one part that really kind of stands out to me because that's one thing that you know, for people who know me in this hobby, they know that, you know, yes, I am very involved, very engaged in Pokemon, but I collect and kind of diversify and stuff that I get made fun of constantly. So, and I don't mind it because I think it's funny because I'm like, well, I really like this stuff. And one of my favorite things about collecting as a whole is the treasure hunt and being able to find, I mean, like you said, it's like you, not only do you know, you see creepy guy, you know that there's a blue pants variant. You see creepy guy,
Mm.
and so you know, and in coins is another thing I try to get it. There's a Scarface minted error that I really like, and I can't remember. It's a particular coin, but I think it's like 9 grand or so. It's like a really expensive coin, but I like it because I went through a phase where I really dove into that and was like, what am I looking for? Like, what's some rare stuff? Oh, these are cool errors. Not the most expensive coin, obviously not the cheapest coin. people know that I've like graded VHSs. I've tried to find really, really rare VHSs. I've looked at like movie scripts, like original movie scripts from the actual movie, not reprints of like some of my favorite movies, and trying to put like displays and stuff together. So, kind of in the name of this series, which I think you've kind of proven everybody wrong, because we're talking about a lot of collectibles here and things that you've collected so far. It's not just, Pokemon is one avenue that you're doing. Do you see yourself ever stopping collecting anything, or is it going to be something similar to like my mindset where there's always something else I'm going to look into collecting, or like trying to find, or treasure hunting? Like I truly, you can say collector. I consider myself like a treasure hunter in different categories of stuff, which is, some people would think is a galactic waste of time, but it brings me a lot of joy. Are you in a similar boat, or is there kind of a different mindset when you see yourself like, stepping back from business? You got some time, capital's there, things are running. Where do you see yourself in the collector's realm at that stage?
Yeah, I've described it as like chapters or seasons of my life. And I think the prime Pokemon collecting days for now were like 2014 to 2019. That was peak Pokemon collecting Dan, Pokemon card collecting Dan. I don't know what the future will hold for me, but I see a real potential that in 10, 20 years from now, maybe even significantly less, maybe significantly more, I might start buying the Pika Ring and the Mew Orb. I might start buying the SSBs and the TMBs, and I might start buying some really crazy stuff depending on how life treats me. Where I am right now in my journey, where I am right now in my life, what they are, like percentage of my net worth, all that stuff, percentage of my business cash flow, it just feels irresponsible. It doesn't feel like I'm getting enough value to make it make sense. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. If I were a different person, if I had an unexpected windfall tomorrow, if I woke up with $10 million in my lap tomorrow, I would hit up Chris and Brendan. I would own that Victory Ring and that Mew Orb, and if they're still available. I haven't seen in a while. But that's just not where I'm at right now. I remember passing on them. And not like I passed on them and bought nothing else. I passed on them in 2019, and instead I bought a Master Scroll. And instead I bought like Mysterious Pearls, and I passed on a Miracle Diamond. But I now bought a number 1, 2, 3, 4 English Trophy Pikachu. So I've been there. I've been around. The most I've ever spent on a single Pokemon card, and I guess it wasn't really a single Pokemon card. It was the number 1, and then it included all the stamped festivals, the champion all the way on down to the top 32. I spent 20 grand. I bought it from the 2014 World Champion, and I have a hard time mentally spending that much or more on any other single card. Like the Mew Orb and the Pika Ring, though, I will say multiple times, I was in my DM with Chris and Brennan, and I was ready to send them something. And it's just like, I can't justify it.
They'll be on in a couple of weeks, so I've already got that scheduled, and it's public. Like you guys,
I saw that one.
Maybe I'll get you. I'll try and get even more of a homie hookup for you, and just say, look, Ketchum 20, does it work with you guys? Like, what are we looking at?
Quick chill for peak. If you are here, hit that like, hit that subscribe. I was on here 2 years ago. I only had a 5 o'clock shadow then, but I've grown a full beard since. And the amount of crazy interviews that Peak had a couple years ago, go binge that backlog. And then if you don't want to binge the backlog, subscribe now. Watch what's coming. He gave me a little bit of spoilers for what's coming. I'm not going to spill them, but like, it is worth the subscription. So subscribe while you are here and stay tuned.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. I've got to shake rust off YouTube. You're my pro here, because I'm like, I forget to even say smash the like button. Thanks, guys. I'll get a single super chat one day, and I'm celebrating that person forever. So here's what we're going to do, guys. We got a few more minutes. I'm going to go through just a little bit of backlog of questions, and we'll try to rapid fire these, Dan, so we can get as many as we can. So Punky DB, thank you for being here. He said, Dan, you adapt your business to the ebbs and flows in the market, depending on demand or opportunities going away or new things coming along. What is the thing you would be most? I feel like you could maybe rearrange those words better than I can, because I don't know what's being asked.
Is there a second comment that links in with that? I almost feel like he got cut short there.
Here we go.
what is the thing you would be most surprised to see go away in your business this year, and what would be least surprising? So I would be surprised if Fanatics Live were to stop. I've talked with them in the background. I feel like they're really putting a big focus on it. I feel like they're putting a big focus on TCG. So I would be most surprised, and I would be most financially devastated. And PK probably wouldn't be too thrilled about it either, because he just did his engineering job.
I think you would be. I think you'd be finding something else for him to do at that point, or he'd be.
I would be most. Yeah, I would be most surprised to see that go away. What would I be least surprised to go away?
That's a good question.
Would probably be something. It would probably be something that I'm barely using. Like I don't really know. What would I be least surprised to see go away?
I mean, your Craigslist listings, I'm sure, do really well, but you know.
I mean, at this point, like Probstein has got his own platform coming on, and I use Probstein a little bit. I wouldn't be horribly surprised to see that go away with the recent news that I've seen, him creating his own platform. And but he said in an interview on a podcast, like he said, eBay knows about it. It's not a secret. Like I almost think that he's building something that they're gonna buy from him. So yeah, I don't know, but I would say eBay consignments, Probstein eBay's sealed consignments specifically, because he's one of the last few holdouts in the sealed consignment game. Shout out to Greeny though.
Shout out to Green Shiz.
Consignments. He just fired that up though.
That's true. Not a question, but I'll throw this out there. Skyridge on New Year's Eve. That'd be a fun goal.
That yeah, that was when I talked about doing the WotC tour. I think Skyridge might be the 13th set or 14th set, so it might be like February or January of next year. But I'm confident we can get up to Rocket. Rocket will be May. That would put Jim in June and July, and then you start getting into the Neos, and that gets tough.
That'll be fun. Mason, this was good here. For perspective, Pokemon printed 10 billion cards last year at the same rate that Dan is projecting to rip. That only supports 3,333 streamers. And he did confirm he did the math. So there's your cap.
I'm one little dude. Let's see here.
We'll go through a couple more. I'm just going, if you guys have dropped stuff at the front of the chat, I'm at the back here. So just 1 second. Let's see. Ernesto made it. I'm happy about that. Grimer said, what's the Quaxley PC end game? So maybe we could ask, like, is there a Quaxley Grail that Dan considers as his Quaxley Grail, or have they not made it yet?
I think it's yet to be made. I'm still waiting for the Quaxley 1 of 1 serialized. I will be a heavy bidder when that card comes out. Whenever that card comes out, I'm gonna be bidding to win on that one.
I could see him showing up if he hasn't already on a Worlds promo card. That could be a place where he could shine, his first trophy.
Greeny just popped up in chat. Collector's showcase, more like I will sell everything within arm's reach showcase.
Josh, we talked about you earlier, and that was awesome. Oh, Dan, come on. You can't do it as the guest.
I had to be your first one.
Official.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Dan is the first super chat ever on the channel. I appreciate you, dude. That's amazing. Let me see if I missed anything. Thrifty making fun of my collection as usual. That's fine. Okay. We'll get Josh in because he always brings fun stuff. Question, will you be going in on MetaZoo at distributor prices or only if you can get a special deal?
So I used to do MetaZoo Saturdays. I used to do videos, not every Saturday, but I would do them on Saturdays when I did them. I did say last I was talking about it but probably about a year ago now, probably about February. I said if MetaZoo had a partnership program in the future, if they came back, I would probably interact with them. If they didn't, I probably wouldn't. A drastic thing has changed though in the past year. I've added on live streaming. I've added on the ability to sell at 110% of market, 115% of market for Pokemon. Maybe I can't do that for MetaZoo, but I will be making a video, a little bit of self-promo here at the end. I'm going to make a video for this Saturday, MetaZoo Saturday video. I've got I've got all my binders set up to go through. I'm going to flip through the binders. I'm going to get a little bit nostalgic on old original MetaZoo. And I'm going to talk about my plan. I've placed a massive pre-order for MetaZoo boxes. It's going to be all the Dan, not financial advice. I'm doing this for these reasons. Don't copy me. But
500 view videos.
yeah,
I always used to
going to be
laugh at
buying
the
them.
comparison with those.
I'm going to be buying them. I have a different setup than I used to. I used to only be able to do what I did because of having the partner pricing. But now with the live streaming, I'm going to give it a shot. Maybe it'll fall flat on its face again. Maybe it'll be a poor decision again. But I'm going back.
I think my difference is, and I know, Josh, this was definitely for Dan, but I'll throw it in here. My, MetaZoo before, it was more just interest. I liked some of the arts, and I think I've heard you say this. I'm sure you have. I like cryptid lore. Like, I think it's cool to kind of just see. And I'm still thinking back when you were talking about Australian cryptids and you went through all the list with Kai's question, I think. That just made me laugh because I was just thinking of like, what kind of crazy kangaroo cryptid is there? But I really like the cryptid origin. This time around, I pre-ordered a couple boxes. I'm honestly just backing it because I believe in the people more this time around, and I think that's the case with a lot of people who are giving it a shot. And I don't think that that's necessarily because the last kind of leaders of that TCG, founders of that, I don't think it's necessarily because of any of their behavior and it's comparing. I think it's literally just the people who are surrounding this and kind of taking this initiative, or I wouldn't even say trustworthy. I just think they've got really, really good heads on their shoulders, and they're very smart, and they're very intertwined with like a collector mindset, a player mindset. Like, they really keep those things at the forefront. Obviously it's not a Kickstarter project either, which I think helps. So I'm not going to say I'm like bullish or bearish necessarily. I just look forward to being able to have fun. I hope it actually doesn't make a ton of waves, but it keeps its staying power. That's my hope for it. As someone who's not affiliated with MetaZoo.
I used to get a lot of pushback saying that, like, I think one of the things that led to MetaZoo's failure was the boom. People won't believe this, but like, I would rather prismatic evolutions for Pokemon not be as crazy as it was. I'd rather it be a fair bit cheaper, a fair bit more available, because it's risky. It's risky for me to buy it at the obscene price it is. I would rather MetaZoo not go to $200 a box within a week, within a month. I would rather not have the MSRP conversation. I would rather it be a little bit more low key, slowly build a nice base, slowly build a little player base, and be a reasonable release. I want it to be around in 5-10 years. But like, I would rather not go through the just obscene, crazy 5-10x's out of the gate. I'm going to have my video for Saturday will likely be longer than this entire live stream. So I will spare everyone right now going too deep on it. Tune in for Saturday.
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying the Pokemon craziness. I kind of like the insanity of not being able to find anything, because I think it's great for Pokemon too, because it keeps people constantly paying attention, which is good. I've got to shout out Poketino here. Thank you so much. No problem being second. That's amazing. I don't even think I've seen you in the live chats in this channel before. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Let's see here. So Josh came in. I didn't read the question. I didn't pre-read, and it's always a gamble with Josh. Do you think someone would have a chance at getting distro if you propose to them that you only plan on buying MetaZoo, or is it zero chance? I think this will be probably our final question, and Dan, you're going to be able to answer that a lot better than I can.
Yeah, so I'm engaging. Like, I have no insider information. I'm engaging actively in the MetaZoo Discord, keeping up with all their announcements. And they announced about a week ago now, whenever it was exactly, they're releasing through GTS, MAT Cardio is a big one for the US. I believe, as an individual with a business of some kind, I believe Cardio will be your best thing. I don't think GTS will take you on. I don't think MAT will take you on. I have distribution relationships with both of them, over a decade old. But so I pre-ordered through both of them a little bit, well, a fair bit through both of them. And then I also created a new account through Cardio, and I ordered a little bit through them. I think, yeah. So if you're not in with any of the big proper distributors, MAD GTS included, I would look into creating an account with Cardio. That said, I've seen a little bit of pushback in the MetaZoo community. Like, why are we letting all these people who don't sell anything else become become businesses around? Like, I think people are signing up with Cardio to order like 12 boxes, 24 boxes.
Oh,
It's like
wow.
at that point, you're not really a retail business at that point. I don't want to be the one to decide what is allowed, what is not allowed. Maybe Cardio will have limits, but I've seen some commentary around that, a lot of which I kind of agree with.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And it's also like how deep do people want to go? You know, how much expendable capital are they willing to like throw into a game that truly is new and is coming from a bad reputation? So it's like, I guess you can kind of weigh the pros and cons, but um, with that being said, guys, it's hilarious that we ended on a MetaZoo question, of course.
I would have
Um,
been surprised if we didn't have any.
that's true. That's true. But yeah, Dan, thank you so much for coming on again, man. You know, again, it's been literally over 2 years since I've done this, which is just when I looked at it, I was like, oh, I did that like last year, and realized, holy crap, that was a very short time
Absolutely
ago and a very
crazy.
long time ago. Yeah, it's crazy, but always appreciate you coming on. Always enjoy talking to you. You know, I feel like we at least touch base at least a couple times a week, and it's always a good time. So. Um, I guess I've got all of your stuff in the description. I believe I put your Fanatics profile there. If not, I'll make sure it's in there. But um, I guess I'll leave it on this. Anything that we haven't talked about that you maybe you're kind of setting your sights on for doing this year that's different than what you've been doing, or are you just enhancing everything that you're doing currently?
I think live stream and consignments are the big focus. Outsourcing, I mentioned it in my 2025 goals video and my 2024 recap video. I'm ending business to consumer. I've been making a joke the past week, like, you know, that saying, the customer's always right. I don't want to deal with the customer directly because I don't want to be wrong that much. I like dealing with business to business because other businesses are not always right. Unfortunately, the customer is always right. So I'm just not going to put myself in that interaction. So I'm focusing on B2B. I am sourcing. Sourcing is like the biggest thing that I like, sourcing, content creation. So I'm bringing those to the forefront. I'm sacrificing some margin. I'm compensating some other businesses quite well to outsource the things I don't want to do. And yeah, so it's not going to be anything drastic. That's what I'm feeling, thinking. Like, there's nothing hidden here. If in June, if in November, I announce some massive thing, I promise it wasn't even in the back of my mind. It was like, because if you had asked me this a year ago, I wouldn't have told you that in October I'm going to launch Fanatics Live. So
Right.
for all I know, there's nothing big planned. But like, who the hell knows in this market, in this thing that we've got going on. But yeah, it's improving Fanatics Live. It's likely expanding into eBay Live. I'm gonna try to get a MetaZoo stream going. I'm gonna try to get a MetaZoo streamer going. Potentially MetaZoo streamer 3. Potentially we'll see if either PK or Pongo wants to do solely MetaZoo streams. Relative to what they're making in Pokemon streams, it would be quite dark. So maybe they don't want to take it on, but
Basic
we'll see.
Trader might do
I'm
24-hour streams for you. You could have a QVC of just MetaZoo all the time.
I mean, if he wants to work for MetaZoo product, especially old MetaZoo product, I mean, that's a relationship we could work out maybe. But if he wants to work out for a high hourly wage, that's going to be a little bit more dicey.
Oh, that's funny. One thing I did forget to ask you, and I want to make sure I do. Where can people see you in person this year and not on camera?
Yeah. So I was going over this with my wife just recently, but I plan on being, so I'm going to, people won't see me there, but next Thursday, Pokemon Day, I'm going to be in Chicago. I might see Old School. I might see Mr. Walrus. I might see a couple people there, but I won't really be at an event. I'll just be streaming with Ponga. In March, it will be Fort Lauderdale. So MetaZoo release weekend is March 28th. I will be at Fort Lauderdale Collecticon. And then I'm literally going through my Google Calendar right now to make sure I don't miss anything. I won't be making Chicago in April, but I will be at Cleveland, I plan on making. And when I'm done going through this long spiel, I'm going to turn it around on you because I hope we cross paths. I don't know if we will, but I hope we do. So I'm going to be at Cleveland at the end of June. I'm going to be in New Jersey in mid-July. I'm going to be in Charlotte in early August. I'm going to be at Card Party, hopefully in early October. And I think that's my whole year. So that's a lot of events already.
That is a lot.
Where are you going this year? You're probably going to some of the Texas ones, right?
Oh, of course. I'm actually stepping up quite a bit. I'm checking in. I call them more local shows. I mean, they are local shows, but I'll be at like March 9th. I'll be at North Texas Card Show, which truly is a local show. I'll be at Dallas Card Show, which is actually pretty big. That's on March 15th. Usually a pretty sports heavy show, but they've gotten more and more TCG over the years. So I'm going to be at that. I'm going to try to make. I know I'll be at both Dallas Collecticon. So if anybody's at Dallas Collecticon, I'll be there. I won't be vending. I'll be walking around and just buying, probably exclusively. I might throw a few things on some tables, but I mean, I'm going in with heavy budgets this year to be able to buy up stuff. I'll try to make one Houston Collecticon, and then I am going to, this will be me selling the wife. I'm going to try to make Charlotte for obvious reasons. There's some fun stuff that happens in Charlotte, so I want to try and make Charlotte. So out of all the lists that you said, that would probably, that would be the one.
Yeah, I looked at my personal calendar. We have some weddings. We have some graduation. We have like the normal things in real life, in personal life. And those are the ones that fit my schedule the best. Those are the ones that kind of makes me cross paths with the most people possible. But I am proud and thankful to say that I have so many friends and so many like relationships in this hobby. It's a plus and a minus. I can't see everyone. It's not possible. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that are only going to like the one local to them. They're only going to this handful, and there's 18 of them. And then there's card parties, and then there's front row, and then there's it. Like we are so spoiled this year with events. So I hope you make Charlotte happen because I'll be bummed. I'll be bummed if I don't cross paths with Peak.
Yeah, I've got to see you riding a very, very tiny four-wheeler at some point.
Yeah.
That's always card parties in Florida, or where is it?
It's in Florida in May, I believe. I can't make that one because there's some personal calendar. Plus, Florida in May, I just don't want to. And then there's also there's the one in Washington. So someone asked, Poketino, any of you coming to the West Coast? I won't be going to any of the California events, but I'll be going to Card Party Washington, which is in what did I say?
I said the month. October.
Yeah, early October. Yeah, first weekend in October.
Yeah, that's the only reason Charlotte. That's the only reason Charlotte's on my radar. I've had the invite a couple of years in a row now, and I'm just like, man, that would be so fun. So yeah, I'm going to try to do that. And then if things go really well this year and things are going really like a lot more than my expectations, kind of my projections, Chicago could be on the table as well. Cause I love Chicago. It's literally a 2-hour flight from where I'm at. And it's one of the best food cities I've been to personally. So, yeah. So
Chicago's a short flight for me, but like I have a Cub Scout event with my son for the spring one. And then the fall one is like 1 week after Card Party. I really want to do Card Party because I haven't done it yet. So there's a chance that I could cancel Card Party for fall Chicago. It'll be one or the other. It really can't be both. But we'll see. We'll see where the year takes me. I hope to get an invite to the Retro Compound, which is unfortunately like a little ways away from the Card Party event. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, guys, again, thank you so much, chat. We had a decent amount of people in here. You guys are definitely active. To kind of finish it off, Dan and I will be places this year. So I'm sure we'll both let everybody know. But beyond that, guys, have a wonderful night. Thank you guys again. Next episode of this is, I think, on the 22nd. Is that Saturday? Yes, this Saturday. I believe I'm having a Kanto Shark on, actually, who'll be coming on Saturday. If you guys don't know him, or that company, business, etc., check him out on Instagram. Kind of similar to Pallet Town, Crystal Collector. Very high-end stuff, big buying and selling business. Has become a pretty good friend of the hobby. So I'll be back Saturday.
A much taller man than myself. I met him in person. I forget which Collecticon, but I'm 6'5" almost. That dude is like, he's almost 7 foot, I think.
He's a big dude. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks everyone, chat, for making it engaging. Great night as always.
Yeah, thanks guys. Bye.